about if I just start at the beginning? you could be honest.
Because you know what? They have the sweat equity that went into that memory that they're making with their friends and family. And that's what's important with us. And that's what the I Am Real world's about.
Well, that's a great question. You know, one of the best things about a spring food plot is you get a second chance if it fails.
Chasing Giants with Don Higgins. Brought to you by buyafarm.com, your source for farm, recreational properties, rural homes, and more. By tapping into Don's years of experience, dedication, and commitment, Chasing Giants focuses on the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails. Now, here is Don and co-host Terry Peer.
Well, welcome everyone to Chasing Giants, brought to you by buyafarm.com. This is episode 33, middle of October. Deer season is here. Don is on the line. We are separated again by about 4 hours of drive time. How you doing tonight, Don?
I'm doing good, Terry. How about you?
Good. We got a lot of positive feedback from doing the video version, our last episode, but we're separated again by about 4 hours until the next time I come up to hunt. But it seemed like people liked the video version of what we did.
Yeah, there was a lot of positive comments. I still think that most people are probably listening to it on their phone or their car radio on the way to work or something, from what I'm hearing. But those that did watch it seem to really like it. I think the biggest problem with it is it's slow. It's a lot slower. Steve's got to edit that and put some B-roll clips in with the verbiage or us talking. So
yeah, because no one wants to just sit there and watch us talk for an hour. I mean,
right, exactly.
The whole purpose of that is to kind of get some other footage in it. And if anything else, people got to see Steve sitting on top of that telephone pole.
Yeah, that was quite a sight. But
yeah, so we're separated back. It is October 12th, Monday night. What's been going on up your way?
Oh, it's been hot up here. Actually, I've taken off a few evenings. I did hunt again this evening. Seen a nice 3.5-year-old buck. But we got a cold spell coming between the high Wednesday and the high Thursday. They're supposed to drop off over 20 degrees. I think about 22 degrees difference in the high.
Right.
Thursday versus Wednesday. So Steve Shields is coming back up, and we're going to hit it hard, try to get one of my buck tags filled, and get the first buck on the ground.
So we talk about Steve Shields a lot. Steve is a good friend of Don and I's, and we've contracted out some video work for him, and he's actually going to be almost setting full time with you in the tree stand this year as your personal cameraman.
Yeah, trying to get this YouTube thing really to blow up. We're going to talk about something we're doing to promote that a little bit later. But I'm on I got about 5 different bucks that I consider target bucks, and hopefully get 2 of them on the ground with my 2 Illinois buck tags. And
right.
If that happens early enough, I've got another spot out of state on some public ground in another state that I'd like to hit. But if I've still got bucks at home and I can sleep in my own bed and hunt big bucks here, that's exactly what I'm going to do. But we'll just have to see how the season plays out. That's
actually how my situation when I was up there last week ended up. Is we really didn't have the right conditions. We videoed the podcast on Friday night, woke up Saturday, and the wind had shifted a little bit away from where the forecast was, and I don't really have a stand site across the farms that I can hunt for that wind. If everybody remembers, I got a bum knee, and I got ladder stands up in a couple different spots, but I don't have a ladder stand for a specific wind that was going to be Saturday night. So I packed up and came home last Saturday, and I did hunt Sunday night, saw a couple, one of them that I would have shot, but he was on the other side of the field. And this last weekend was actually youth rifle season here in Kentucky. So my son Jonathan has just busted his tail since I got hurt and through when I had surgery, and helped out not only around the house but also on the farm trying to get it ready for me to hunt. So believe it or not, since last week ago Sunday, I have not been hunting one time. And I've decided to let him get next crack at a deer. Even if I do not shoot a buck in Kentucky this year, because of how he's 15 years old. He's been the biggest help in the world to me as I've been hurt around the house and everything. So my number one priority is getting him on a buck this year. I might hunt a little bit when he can't, but if I have the choice to hunt and he's available, he's going to be the one hunting. That's going to be my priority here in Kentucky the rest of the year.
Well, that speaks a lot about your character, and I had a chance, and on a related topic, I had a chance just a day or two ago to watch your Whitetail Cribs segment, and I just encourage the listeners of this podcast, if you've not seen it yet, you need to go look for Terry Pierce's Whitetail Cribs video that the guys from Exodus Trail Cameras did. And I think you'll have a whole new respect for Terry, not only for his hunting skills, because you're going to see a room full of big deer, but just listen to what he has to say throughout that video. And as a person, you're going to learn to respect him the way I do. And what you're doing for your son, I'm not the least bit surprised that you're doing it. But those that don't know, you might be. We're both driven to kill big deer, but at the same time, we try to keep our priorities in order.
Yeah,
so hopefully
he's really busy on a normal school year this time of the year, but with COVID, a lot of the after-school activities are kind of canceled or postponed or scheduled a different way. So he's actually got a lot more time to hunt this year. So, like I said, if I get a chance and he's not available, I'll go out, but I am in no way, shape, or form going to put pressure on my farm to the point that it would risk something for him. But I can tell you one thing that I've seen, and I don't know if you've seen this up here or not. I went from September to every night having 30 to 35 deer in the alfalfa, then move into the soybeans, to not seeing a single deer in the alfalfa till right before dark. And I want to tell you something. This is the biggest acorn crop I have ever seen since I started really watching it. The amount of acorns here this year is unbelievable, and I have no doubt that those bucks and does are feeding on those acorn flats before they're coming out.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's exactly what I was going to suggest when you start talking, is that but the acorns are falling because they are here too. But we got a late freeze, and our acorn crop. Well, it depends on the oaks. I mean, I've got a red oak in my yard that's just absolutely loaded, but the bur oaks do not have near as many as they have in years past. And that late freeze, I think, when those oaks were in bloom, froze off, a lot of those blooms, and thus we don't have the acorn crop that we typically do up here. Well, but you're like 4 hours farther south, so that's a different story.
If I was hunting just for myself, I would probably go set up in a ladder stand on those oak flats that I have set up, but it's just too risky to put pressure on something when I want him to get the first crack at a deer. So I'm just going to lay back, even if it's not hunting for a while. I'll get my shot and my chance sometime this year. I'm not worried about that, but hopefully he's never shot a deer. He's shot quite a few deer, but he's never shot one big enough to mount, and he wants to hang his mount in his bedroom. So that's the number one priority for the year.
You might have to bring him to Illinois.
We've talked about that. There's a very good chance we might end up doing that later in the year. So especially we'll see what late season does. So
a good deal.
So upcoming rut report. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that on this podcast. The last 2 years, I've done a rut report on my Facebook page, where every day during November, I give a report of the day's hunt and, what my tactics I'm using and how they change through the rut, and how the deer's habits change, from the 1st of November through the peak of the rut and into the tail end of the rut. And to my knowledge, when I first started that, nobody else had a rut report. And then the next year, it was so popular.
Right.
And the next year, Realtree comes out with a rut report, and there was a couple others doing it as well. So I'm guessing this fall there's going to be even more. In the hunting industry, you got about 30 days to run with a good idea, and then it's going to be copied.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't care who you are, what the idea is. But anyway, I wanted to give everyone a heads up that if you found this podcast, but you have not found my Facebook page, Higgins Outdoors, you can just go there and like the page or follow the page. And during the month of November, you'll see those daily rut reports. And they got so popular last year. There were several days that there was over 10,000 people had viewed them.
Right.
It's just, I run into people all the time that say, love your rut report, and whether it be at a trade show or whatever. So wanted to give people a heads up to be looking for that. If you're not already following Higgins Outdoors on Facebook, you might start doing that. And that kind of leads into the next topic I want to talk about, is a giveaway. So, we've talked about my Whitetail Master course that I offer here on my home property in the spring. In the past, I've had like 2 classes a year, but I'm going to have to expand that next year. So next spring, there'll be 3 of those classes. They're all held on Saturdays, but we meet on Friday evening before. Kind of a social hour, have pizza, just kind of get to know each other. And then
actually, we did a podcast that night.
Yeah. And we may do podcasts at some of them again this year, where the audience is there. You can ask questions live,
right,
and put Terry and I on the spot, and we'll do it. But starting around Thanksgiving, I'm going to announce a winner for 3 podcasts in a row. I'm going to give away a free attendance at that Whitetail Master course, one at each class. And so to be eligible, you have to go to my YouTube channel, which is Chasing Giants at Higgins Outdoors. And you got to subscribe to that YouTube channel. And you've also got to like and follow my Facebook page, Higgins Outdoors Facebook page. So the winner will come from someone who does those 2 things. So we'll keep reminding you on each of these podcasts, but
right.
Starting about Thanksgiving, we'll announce the first winner, and then for 3 consecutive podcasts, we'll announce a winner.
Yeah, and it's really tough because Facebook is discouraging these contests. So we have to be very careful in how we word it. It'll be more like what's called a giveaway as far as Facebook goes, and we have to use different terminology. But the bottom line is we want the engagement from all of our listeners of the podcast to go to Chasing Giants with Higgins Outdoors YouTube channel, because there's so much information that we're spending a lot of money and time on to just try to educate people. We're not there with 40-second or 40-minute real-world commercials. We might talk a little bit about it and how we use it, but it is simply tactics and understanding and educating what's a little bit different about chasing a 4.5-year-old or older buck. So be sure to check out. We will post different stuff about that, and then Don and I will work together to try to kind of figure out the proper verbiage so Facebook doesn't ban it. Basically, we have to be careful of that. So speaking of giveaways, the winner of the cell camera that I gave away, they had to comment on episode, I believe, 31 off the top of my head. It was the episode with Dr. Strickland. A gentleman by the name of Jared Miller won it. I did a random Facebook search. You actually put the link in this website, and it goes through and randomly picks somebody. We had a ton of comments on that episode. And Jared actually lives about 25 minutes from me. Never met him in my life. So it picked him, and I contacted him, and he chose the Wise Eye camera. and that's supposed to be showing up here in the next couple days. And you got one coming to you, Mr. Higgins, too. I bought you one of them. So you got.
Wow, well, thanks.
You got to try one of these things. I just want you to compare them and see what you think a little bit in it. But, yeah, there's a shipment of those coming in, and I'll get it over to Jared. So I'm not sure if he's a podcast listener, but he won the free WiseEye cell camera. So a couple things we got going on here.
Good deal. You know, we've had you focused on testing the cell cams, and then way back, when was it, in the spring or early summer?
Right.
I was looking at a bunch of different cameras, and I'm not going to mention brands here, but I thought I'd found a good camera, and I went out and I bought 12 of them. And let me tell you something, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
Of those 12, I've already sent 3 of those back for repairs. And the ones that I'm still using, I mean, I just don't know what to expect when I go check a camera. It'll be a situation where I'll think I should have somewhere between 500 and 1,000 pictures. And I may have 50 or I may have 8,000. It's either missing a bunch of things or it's taking a picture of every blade of grass blowing in the wind. And the fact that I've had to send 3 of them back, I mean, I'm just totally disgusted with that brand. But I'm not going to throw them under the bus. I'm going to wait and till I have some positive news. Well, I'll tell you, I'll share some positive news. You know, I've got the one Exodus render, their cell cam.
Right.
I'll tell you what, that thing, I'm pretty impressed with it.
Yep.
Yeah, I really don't have it. My only complaint is I wish the night pictures were just a little bit clearer.
Yeah.
But that thing is still on the same set of batteries. It's sending me like about somewhere between 20 to 40 pictures a day.
Right.
And I don't know how long these batteries have been in since I've had it. And it's still showing 100% battery life, and I'm still getting pictures. So
yep.
I'm pretty impressed with that camera, actually.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that, I've gotten to learn a lot about the cameras, and I actually, you know, my tests for the cell cameras were basically $300, around $300 price point and below. Now, people don't realize this, but I also have a Reconic cell camera, but it's not even in the test. But there was so much bad information out there about especially some of these cheaper commodity cameras. You know, it's just a race to the bottom. I picked 6 and we did it. And actually, I scored Exodus as so far the second out of the 6. And the only reason that it fell behind the WiseEye, I do think the nighttime pictures of the WiseEye are a little bit better. They're actually very close to the Reconics. But the photo management software of the WiseEye is unbelievable. You could even take your pictures from your, say, standard non-cell cameras and upload them into the software on the website, and it will filter out all your does, and then you can just delete them. So it actually has species recognition and also antler recognition. And I want to tell you something. Even the antlers picked up a little spike the other day that was only like 3 inches tall. But as far as talking about the Reconics using the Scout Tech, the cool thing I like about it, so let's say me and you are talking about the lease property, right? We could put that Exodus camera on that lease property, and through Scout Tech, you could actually give an invite to the other guys that would hunt that property. And they can see the pictures, or you all can go in there. So even for like, say, outfitters or leases that have multiple guys, they can manage people going in and seeing the pictures. You can set like administrator rights to where you can only view them, but you can't copy and paste them or save them out, or you can't delete them. The other cool thing about that camera is you just buy data. So you say, I want to buy X amount of data. Well, I can put up to like 10 cameras, because it might be in a spot where you're only getting, say it would be like a spot that you were chasing Trump at years ago, where you're not going to get that many pictures. Well, on normal cell cam, you're wasting $15 to $25 a month on a data plan for the one camera, right? Mm-hmm. You can run as many cameras as you want inside of that data plan. When you run out of data for as many cameras as you want, you just buy more data. So there's a couple really cool things about that XS camera that I really like. But I mean, it's hard to beat a 5-year warranty. I mean, let's face it.
Yep.
So,
well,
we're learning a lot
tested this year. That Exodus renders is, I've been impressed.
Yep.
But
so we talk about customer service a little bit. I haven't told you this story. And they don't. I will be as impartial as I can with this comment. But when I left your place a week ago Saturday, I had my Quiet Cat on the hitch carrier because I was hauling home a full load or a ton of feed. So I decided instead of just laying my Quiet Cat bike in the bed, I would put the hitch receiver in it. Well, I stopped to get fuel south of Indianapolis, and I noticed the bike was at this weird angle. And I went back and looked at it, and one of those brackets that go down over the rear tire had broken. And I about lost. I mean, I was lucky I stopped for fuel. If I would have kept driving, I probably would have lost the bike. But I took some pictures, and I sent just an email to customer service at Quiet Cat. And I had somebody contact me the next day asking questions, trying to help me, and new parts are on the way. I mean, so we talk about customer service, and, when I contacted their customer service, they did not know I was with Chasing Giants or that they were a sponsor of the podcast. They just knew I was a customer that needed help. And I had an email response and a phone call. They actually called my cell phone and, walk through the problem with us. They did have a couple questions. They want to know if I was went into a store and somebody tried to steal it or whatever. But, they got new parts on the way right now to get me back up and going in case I need to use that thing again. So I was really impressed with the customer service of Quiet Cat this week.
Well, customer service is everything. With Real World, we've tried to use customer service to set us apart from a lot of other seed companies. And I mean, Wes and I being the co-owners of the company, you can call Real World. You can talk to either one of us. If we're not in the office, Janice will give you our number or pass your number along to us. And we try to build that company on customer service. And I think with all our sponsor companies, we're not one of them outfits that just looks for any sponsor. It's got to be a product that we're already using or we want to use. We don't have to have a sponsor for everything that we have. But you look down the list of the companies that we're working with, and, it's all companies that have top-notch customer service.
Yep.
As well as high-end products, too.
Yep. So just some good feedback for those of you. Like I said, I hadn't even told you that story, but things happen, and you just try to. There's a reason trail cameras cost $100. You're not going to get what you pay for, or you're going to get what you pay for. So anyway, as we move on, so you said you have a cold snap coming in, and Steve's coming in middle of the week.
Yeah, he'll be in Wednesday midday. We're going to hunt Wednesday evening, and I'm going to go against one of my rules here of never hunting in October morning. But I've got one place that I can hunt on my farm that has got a foolproof entry, and I may even, since Steve's going to be here, if he wasn't here, I wouldn't even be doing it. But since he's here and his time's valuable, we may slip into that blind if we get the right wind on a morning hunt. But
that's
probably what'll happen. That'll be
that's a spot that either you can have a shot at getting him, or you will not booger a single deer on your farm, though.
Yeah, and those people that are going to come to my Whitetail Master course will see this spot and understand why you can hunt it in the morning, because we talk about the bucks running the downwind edge of their bedding cover in the morning and then hooking into it. And they can still do that, but you're off to the side where there's no way they're going to get you and they don't get behind you, because behind you me is just a plowed field,
Right.
and they just don't go out there.
And from back in the days when you had the tree farm, you got the cover, basically Donald Trump wall at the southern border that they can't see through to get in and out. So you have a blockade of cover that you can slip in and out. So, yeah, if it's the right conditions and you think you got a shot at it, it's worth it.
Well, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to kill that guy, the buck that we're after, on a morning hunt. And everybody's going to say, you said don't hunt October morning. And 99.9% of the time, that is the best advice. Don't hunt October mornings. And I've got probably a dozen or more stands and blinds on this farm, and I wouldn't try it on any of the others. But
you
this
probably
one
don't
setup,
have a single spot anywhere that you would do it other than that specific spot.
Yeah, that's true. I don't. But again, the only reason I'm doing it is because Steve's here. I want to try to make the best use of his time and as possible.
We learned really quick with you doing your consultant work, with us, doing Chasing Giants, that there's always the people that are going to say, but I did it here, so it's got to work.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, there's occasions where you can do stuff and get away with it. But what we're trying to give people advice on, and we say it all the time, it's consistency. And I bet after I'm going to try to make a comment and not exaggerate. I bet in the last week, should I say week? Let's say the last 9 days. So not just a little bit longer than a week. I bet I have been asked about this, what do they call this new technique? The bump and dump. Have you heard this?
Yeah.
Where you go in and try to bust a buck out of its bed and then hang a stand and then go in at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., waiting for him to come back. And, yeah, it's possible you could have success in it. But, I mean, I don't know, but you can comment if you want. But I just don't want to put that kind of pressure on any place. And for the one time you're going to succeed, how many times are you going to fail?
Well, and that technique may have some validity in certain situations, but most deer hunters have a limited acreage they have to hunt. They may have 1 or 2 farms. You go stomping through there and busting bucks out of their bed. First of all, he may never come back. If you bump him twice, he's not, for sure. At least in the real world, you may get away with bumping him once and he comes back, but he also may go to the neighbor's farm. And like I tell my consulting clients all the time, if you want to consistently kill mature deer, you've got to hunt them on the properties where they bed. They spend their daylight hours. And if you're just one property over, your odds of killing that deer is 10%.
Right.
So you go and bump a buck and he starts bedding on your neighbor. Well, guess what? Your odds are just a fraction of what they were before. And I'm not saying it never works, because obviously it does, but
and those guys
so
that
rattling, calling, and sense. But
sure,
I
and
sure don't go promoting them either.
That's exactly where I was going with this. The guys that are hunting public and they have one shot to go in, it's a different situation. What we're trying to talk about is for the guys that want to have the best chance year after year of learning what these older bucks are doing. And I think that's what kind of separates our podcast and our information that you're putting out on the YouTube channel different away from everybody. For the guys that want to hang in a saddle and go in and bust a deer out of his bed and then hang a tree over it, have at it, and we wish you nothing but the best of luck. But I think it takes a special situation, a certain experience level of a hunter, and the right property to be able to do that on. And doing that blind is tough. Well,
there's no doubt. And the guys that are promoting this tactic and having success at it, they're not just the beginning hunter. They're not going
Right.
I mean, they know exactly what they're doing. They know when that buck comes back how he's going to get to his bed.
Exactly.
They know he's going to use the wind, and they're taking all that into account. Just to go out there and bump a deer and throw a stand up and come back at 2 a.m., well, for most people, they're going to be winded by that buck as he comes back in. So I'm not saying it never works, and I'm not bashing the tactic either.
Yep.
Just want to be clear about that. But
there's a time and place for everything.
Yep, exactly.
So, but again, we're trying to help people get advice on how to do it consistently with what we've learned. So, and it comes back to the most famous thing: lack of intrusion. It's hard to do that when you're jumping one out. So, all right, well, we're 30 minutes in. Let's take a quick break and go to the buyfarm.com property of the week.
Buyafarm.com is your source for farm, recreational properties, rural homes, and more. Now, here is Don Higgins with this week's featured property.
All right, this week's featured property is actually an online auction for 40 acres in Alexander County, Illinois, near Miller City, Illinois. The bidding on this 40 acres closes on Thursday, October 29th at 8 p.m. So by the time this podcast gets out, you got at least a couple weeks to have a look at this property and get your bid submitted. This property is only about a mile off of the Mississippi River. It's got fantastic deer and waterfowl hunting. It's near Horseshoe Lake. 30 acres this is in WRP, and the balance of the acreage is wooded. There's a pit, a waterfowl pit, and a blind. The pit is a 5-man tank with a concrete floor and has an outside underground compartment for housing, propane tanks and things like that, generators, in case you want to run an ice eater, whatever that is. But the blind is good size also. It'll hold up to 6 guys. The flooded area of the WRP is 12 acres. There'd be 12 acres of water. Like I said, it's just basically about a mile off of the Mississippi River. So you're right on that Mississippi flyway. They've been planting about 7 or 8 acres of that in corn, and then they'll flood that corn. So it'd be fantastic, for waterfowl, but it butts right up to the south end of Horseshoe Lake Conservation Area. So, when the pressure picks up, I guess the property holds a lot of deer. It's kind of a sanctuary for the deer. It butts right up to 1,000 acres of continuous timber and sloughs that come duck seasons, just full of various species of ducks. The real estate taxes are only $100 a year on this 40. There will be a survey provided, and the sale, all mineral rights go to the new owner. So if you're interested in that, you can call agent Mark Kennedy, and Mark's phone number is 618-924-1747. And again, you can get on the buyafarm.com website and look for the 40 acres in Alexander County.
Alexander County, Illinois, right on the Mississippi River. So the guys that like a little bit of deer hunting and duck hunting, this is your property in a 40-acre tract. It should go at an affordable price there.
Yeah, and you're not going to find very many 40s where you got good duck and waterfowl hunting as well as good deer hunting.
Right.
So 2 or 3 or 4 guys could go together. That like to waterfowl hunt and buy this, and not cost them a lot of money.
Yep. So please go out and look at buyafarm.com and search for this property. Also give a follow to Buyafarm's Facebook page. They're doing a lot more work on their social media right now, putting the properties out there. So I encourage you to go check them out. We appreciate them for their support of the podcast.
Absolutely.
All right. So we got some questions today.
Got a couple submitted questions.
All right, let's hear them.
So the first one comes from Sean Kelly, and Sean is from Climax, Michigan. Sean says, really fascinating podcast. Thank you for putting this together. My background, grew up in Wisconsin, hunted West Central, Dunn, Buffalo, Pepin counties for a couple of decades when quality deer management was starting to be understood. Moved to Michigan in 85, where the culture was and still is not great for deer management. Getting better, though. For the past 10 years, have been hunting east and west central Illinois and western Indiana for mature bucks. Now own 262 acres in Vigo County, which is in Indiana, right around Terre Haute, of what I consider prime property for trophy whitetails. Regarding how the health of does impacts the overall quality of the bucks, very much agree, and dispersal, I heard it is preferred to keep the bucks born on your managed property around versus what Mother Nature will do without any type of interference or dispersal. Dispersal is how nature works to prevent inbreeding, which we all know is very unhealthy for virtually all species. We really want to promote keeping locally born bucks within their original herd. If they truly mature the way we hope, they will likely become a dominant buck, breeding multiple does that over time will carry their own genes. Thanks again for all the fantastic work you do for deer and deer hunters. Sean Kelly.
I'm guessing that this question is related to your theory about shooting a doe with 2 buck fawns so the bucks stay. Is that probably where he's coming from on this question?
Yeah, that's exactly where I think he's getting this. Probably the podcast with Dr. Strickland might have contributed to this question as well.
Right.
It's a good point, but I think you kill the mother, and well, first of all, breeding relatives in the livestock world, it's called line breeding, and that's how you end up with some of the best livestock that there is. And in fact, it's done in the captive deer industry. Some of those big giant bucks you've seen are the result of line breeding, or maybe a father is bred to a daughter, or maybe a half brother is bred to a half sister, or something like that. And I've seen some whitetail biologists. There's different theories on how these giant bucks in the wild come about. An area that's never produced a 200-inch buck, all of a sudden there's a 250-inch giant there. And how does that happen? Well, I've read from a couple of different whitetail biologists who theorize that it is a result of inbreeding or line breeding, whichever you want to call it, that happened in the wild. So a doe, say, has superior antler genetics that she passes on. And she ends up getting bred to, say, one of her own sons, or a buck that's related, carrying those same genes. So when those two animals are mated, it results in extremely large antlers. So to get, the whole genetic thing has always intrigued me in both livestock and whitetails since I was a kid. And it's really fascinating, and it's hard to really get a grasp on, because, even Dr. Strickland in the podcast he was on recently, he was talking about that fetus has a genetic blueprint, if you will. And he was talking about how the doe's nutrition basically turns on and turns off certain genes. And, once that animal's born, well, it is what it is. So, nutrition plays a role there too. So I've done just about everything but answer your question, Sean, in discussing genetics. I don't think that you're going to have a big enough impact on a wild deer herd to really create that much inbreeding or line breeding, whichever you prefer to call it. Besides, it's not an exact science as far as dispersal of whitetails. I've heard figures of 90% and 75%, and figures in between those in regards to the number of yearling bucks that disperse away from their birth area. So I just don't see it being that big of an issue. Sure, some inbreeding is bound to happen, but I don't think it's going to be to the degree that it's going to mess up the genetics of a deer herd on a property.
So I'm going to ask a couple of follow-up questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, I was hoping you would have something.
Well, I mean, first of all, I have a personal opinion in this, and that is every time I'm in the woods and I see or hear people like Dr. Strickland or you who've done research when it comes to genetics, I think about how amazing God's creation is, that this is all just the way things work, that things were taken into account. But if you really look down and dissect it, I think what the dispersal thing, what was Dr. Strickland's term? He used it as like motherly aggression or something like that, where the mother doe would push the buck fawn off.
Yeah, maternal aggression.
Maternal aggression. Yeah, that's the term he used in it. So the way I look at it is, if we didn't have that for a certain percentage, and it's like Don just said, the percentage varies. Some people say 90, some people say 75 leave. If you didn't have any of that, and those generation after generation after generation after generation, and you never had that dispersal at all, that's probably when you would have the problems. What the theory that you've talked to me about now for years about shooting that mother with the buck fawns, I still to this day haven't done it, but you're basically preventing, in that case, one of those two buck fawns from breeding their mother. Most likely, if there's only two buck fawns, there probably isn't a third, a triplet. Triplets are pretty rare. We've had a couple of them. I know you had one on your farm. I had one on mine. But there's probably not a direct full-blooded sister in that equation. So the worst thing that's going to happen is that buck fawn, if you killed its mother and it stays, is going to be breeding possibly a half-sister, which the likelihood of that having the same father as what it did is very, very small. So once you take the mother out of the equation, you're basically getting a very, very thin chance of having true line genetics like what you're talking about if you killed the mother. Did I just explain that somewhat?
I think you did an excellent job, and you bring up another point that, in the wild, but every buck is capable of breeding, and that includes button bucks. So in the wild, even a dominant breeding buck does not breed that many does in the course of an entire rut. And I don't remember the research that I seen a few years ago, but I think like on average, they may only breed, 4 to 6 does. And because, every buck's out there breeding. And so, and if your buck to doe ratio is 2 to 1, then basically on average, each buck gets to breed 2 does.
Right.
And so I think the odds are just against a close inbreeding.
Yeah, so basically the worst case scenario you could have would be one of those buck fawns breeds its half-sister from a previous generation. The likelihood of the father being the same is very, very small. So I think that you would have to, it would be impossible by shooting 1 or 2 does to basically create the situation where, in my opinion, God's creation set up this system to where you did not have the generation after generation after generation after generation of the same exact mother and father, or line breeding of the father breeding the daughter. I think it's next to impossible.
Yep, exactly.
But God's creation is sure impressive.
No doubt about it. And Sean, that's just a long-winded way of saying you don't have anything to worry about. that inbreeding that your question refers to is very unlikely to happen.
I actually
and if it does,
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
If it does, the two animals, even though they are related, are not going to be closely related.
I like the conversation point though, and you and I don't know that we've had this conversation. It's the research that says how many does a buck actually gets to breed, and it actually makes sense because your dominant bucks are taking that first doe that's in heat and pushing her to who knows where and fighting everybody else off. Everybody's competing for that same first doe that comes into heat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they go off, and that's our famous lockdown phase of the rut. And your younger ones are out cruising. So you really think it's not like in a barn lot where you got one bull and you got 10 heifers that come into heat at the same time.
Yeah, and I've seen another research related to this topic. I think it was published in Deer and Deer Hunting by John Ozaga from Michigan, who puts out some fantastic stuff, by the way. But in his study, when a doe has twins, there's a high percentage of the time that those twins have different fathers. So a buck or a doe's in heat. She's got a half a dozen does. Yeah, she got a half a dozen bucks trailing her, and every one of them bucks may end up breeding her. And sperm from two different bucks fertilized those two different eggs, and so the fawns are really not even full siblings; they're half siblings.
Wow!
Because two different bucks, sperm from two different bucks impregnated the two eggs, and it's a pretty significant percentage where it's like that, where
that's wild.
The twins have different fathers.
Amazing. I've never heard that. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
So, but great question.
So we went
Sean.
all over the place with your question, Sean.
Yeah, that's a great question though. I mean, it's I appreciate those kind of questions because people are really trying to understand the decisions that they're making on their properties and what it's doing instead of just meat for the freezer. They're really trying to dive into the management aspect of it. So I really appreciate it. Great question, Sean.
Yeah, it just shows how far management's come in recent years that we have landowners thinking of such things. So
right.
Appreciate your question, Sean. We're going to move on to the next one. The next question comes from Carson Fritz, and Carson is from Spartanburg, South Carolina. Carson says, this year I'm hunting 3 5.5-year-old or older bucks on 3 different properties. All these properties are surrounded by hunters who put a lot of pressure on the deer. These deer are already very irregular in their feeding and movement patterns. I have been thinking about leaving the properties alone during October and November, allowing the bucks to feel safe on my properties so that come December, they will still bed and feed on them during the daytime. Is this a good idea or not? Thank you for all the great teachings.
Hey Don, we got a technical difficulty here. For some reason you dropped out for a second. We heard everything of the question, but if you can start your answer back over again, that would be great. Yep.
Ready?
Yep, go ahead.
Well, Carson, I think you're on the right track here, but you might have taken it just a little bit to the extreme, which in many cases is not a bad thing. But here I think you're walking away from a golden opportunity. You talk about leaving the properties alone totally during October and November so that the bucks are there during December. I think a better approach would be to leave the heart of your properties alone during October and November, but hunt around the edges. If you've already got your neighbors are already hunting up to the property line anyway, you might as well just, push a little bit farther and push those deer into the heart of the property, but continue to hunt the edges of the property with hopes that those deer will bed in the heart of your property and still be around in December if you don't kill them in October and November. I just think there's too much good deer hunting in October and November to totally walk away from the property. I would try to take advantage, but do it in such a way that you're not likely to run those bucks off.
Yeah, I think maybe stating it a different way for you, Don, is if he does not have a way of hunting this property, we know nothing about these properties. If he doesn't have a way to hunt that property without putting pressure on it, he might be onto something and staying away. Because he's just putting the same kind of pressure that his neighbors are.
Mm-hmm.
But if he has a way to hunt it, basically the outer perimeters, like you said, then he can take advantage of some of that pressure of people pushing it to him.
Right. Yeah, when we get these questions, I'm making assumptions in my mind, and sometimes those assumptions may be wrong about the properties in question. So
right.
That's a good point there.
Yeah, I mean, my people think that, when I sit here and talk about, the property that I have on our home farm, I got, 3, maybe 4 shooters. 3 of them I know are older than 4.5. I'm talking about a 30-acre tract of property. And I know for a fact that those deer are not staying on me. Some of them do, but through the course of the rut, no. So, I mean, if you have a way to hunt it and not put pressure on them, I would hunt them every chance you get, because, especially on small properties, you got too many factors with people sitting on a fence line.
Absolutely.
But if you can't hunt them without getting pressure, yeah, your theory might work, especially if you got a food source for them to come back.
Yep.
So I think we only got 2 questions today. Before we move on, I want to circle back, and I know we're probably going to take some more heat from the people that are into saddle hunting and stuff, because I sounded like I dumped on the bump and dump technique, and again, we're not bashing. We're just trying to teach people to do that kind of stuff as a different level of skill set. So please, everybody, you can, it's like the dude that had the nasty comments on the Whitetail Crib show. There's always somebody. We're not going to please everybody, but we're really trying to offer advice and insight to people for things that consistently work, not the things that you got a Hail Mary pass at the end of the season or at the end of the football game. So
yeah, we're promoting the higher odds tactics for helping you guys grow and harvest bigger deer.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that our way is the only way. I feel it's the best way, or I wouldn't be doing it. But there's certainly other ways, and in other parts of the country, there may be better ways.
Right.
But I know what I'm promoting and what Terry's promoting work. They work without question. At least here in the Midwest.
I think that there's people that try to take advantage of the people that want the quick fix or the quick solution.
Mm-hmm.
And coming up with an idea to almost take a turkey hunting mentality of running and gunning and jumping in, and I feel guilty because there's a lot of these young hunters. I talked about it in my Whitetail Cribs episode. There's this journey, right? And people try to get to the point where they're going in on public land and saying, I'm going to kill a 5.5-year-old buck or older on public land before they even know how to hunt, period. And it's just not possible to consistently get results like that. And one of my friends that I'm really close with watched that video, and a lot of people took different things from that Whitetail Cribs episode. But for the people that watched it, I made a comment in there, and not many people have at least told me that, but those 6 bucks in the garage, that the biggest one in there is like 130, 132. It took me longer to kill those 6 bucks in the garage than it did the 13 bucks that are in my basement, that all of them are 4.5 years or older.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes to the point where you just have to learn that journey. And we hope that we can, Don and I are speeding the process up of that journey to give some insight in it. But doggone it, I think we just have to have a little bit of reality, and people have to enjoy and support others in that process of trying to learn this thing we call hunting.
Yeah, absolutely. We were all beginners once. I've shot 1.5-year-old bucks when I started. So it's just a journey that we're all on. We're all at different stages along the way. So instead of looking down at the guys that are just starting, this one of the goals for this podcast is to, help them get to the next level a little quicker and be more successful. So,
your good and dear friend that was at at the podcast filming, he that stuck with me ever since. And he says it's not supposed to be easy.
Yeah.
If it was easy, then it'd be a different sport. And he seems like a super guy. I know you think a lot of him.
Yep, Alan Foster. He saved me probably 10 years on the learning curve when I was about 18 years old. And I'm just trying to repay it back to others. And, it's kind of really transitions into the last thing I want to talk about here on this podcast is, recently I've been getting emails and social media messages from young hunters, have for a long time, but it seems like I've been getting a lot more recently. And when I get those, I talk to these guys. It's usually almost always guys, young guys. And I talk to every one of them as if they were my own son. In other words, I'm giving them the same advice I would give my own kid. And it's kind of funny sometimes because the response that I get back, for example, there's a young man just a week or so ago. He sent me a big long email. He wants to be a whitetail consultant. And, I get these on almost a daily basis. Somebody wants to be a whitetail consultant. It's usually either somebody that's in high school or somebody that's in college. It's almost always somebody under 30 years old. They all want to be whitetail consultants. Well, one of the questions I pose to them is there's so many of you guys. I mean, every year there's a dozen or 24 more people throw out their name as whitetail consultants. What's it going to be 20 years from now? There's going to be more consultants than there are deer hunters. So who's going to be the clients for all you guys? And I would definitely not, if I had, a 20-year-old son today and he wanted to be a whitetail consultant, I would discourage him. I would tell him to do something to make good money and don't get all hung up on making your hobby of deer hunting your livelihood, because if you do, you're going to end up starving and you're going to, cheat your family and your wife and your family out of a good living. Don't chase your dream to the point that it affects your family and the way you're able to provide for them. But, lately, I put this segment here at the very end. So if you're not into politics or religion, you may just want to turn it off now, but I hope something on your heart tells you to stick around and listen. I've got 2 Facebook pages. I got a personal page and then I got my business page. My business page, Higgins Outdoors, is almost totally devoted to deer hunting. And if you follow my private page, just the Don Higgins page, you're going to think that thing is almost totally devoted to politics and some religion. And I've probably offended. I mean, I'm at my Facebook limit on my personal page of 5,000 friends. And that number it's not the same 5,000 this week that it was last week, because I've always got people unfriending me, but I got a list of about 1,000 people that have requested a friend to be friends, but I'm at my limit, so I can't. So, every couple of days I lose some friends, and then I just go to my list and I add more, because I believe in basically saying what's on my mind and standing up for what's right. And I want to talk about this country for a little bit. The political, we got the election coming up, but the political landscape is just something that none of us have ever seen. And I think there's a lot of people on both sides that are pinning their hopes on this election. There's the pro-Trumpers that think if we can just get Trump reelected, he'll get things back on track and it'll all be fine. And then there's the Biden supporters that think we need to get rid of this Trump, and Biden and the Democrats are just going to get things running smooth again. And my opinion is I don't think no matter who wins, this country is ever going to be back to what it was. I think it's, and I don't want to sound like a doomsdayer, but I think we're on the downhill slide, folks. I think that no matter who wins, I've never hidden from the fact that I'm a Christian. I believe in the Bible 100%. The Bible tells the story of this earth, basically. It tells how the story ends. We can read the ending. We know how this is all going to end, and it's playing out right in front of our eyes. If you know anything about the Bible at all, what's going on around us in our world today, it's already been written. And the story's unfolding right in front of our eyes. And I just want to encourage folks, as deer hunters, we get a lot of time to sit in a tree stand without any deer around. We're just sitting there in our own thoughts. And, rut vacations are going to be coming up here real quick, and we're going to spend a lot of time in trees just sitting there thinking. And I would just encourage each of you to think about your situation with your family. If the world does not get any better, if we just continue this downhill slide, if Jesus returns next week, where are you and your family? Where do you stand? Are you going to be able to stand before God and say truthfully that you accepted Jesus Christ long ago? I hope so. The Bible calls the man to be the spiritual leader of the home. And I think that one of the biggest reasons for the decay of our society as men have fallen short on that. And we can't blame the women. It's the men. The men have fallen short in their responsibility of being the spiritual leader in the home. And all you got to do is look at our prisons. I forget what the figure was that I heard, but most inmates did not have a good father figure, and it's some ridiculous percentage. It's men that have not led their families like they should have. So I just want to encourage each of you this fall, as you're in your tree stands, you're on that rut vacation. Maybe you're not at home, maybe you're going out of state for a week-long hunt with buddies or whatever, but you're going to be spending a lot of time there, and you're nothing with you but your thoughts in your tree stand. And I want you to think about that situation with your family. Are you leading your family like you should? I spend a lot of time in trade show booths, as does Terry, and occasionally we'll have young people come up and talk to us. And I'm going to tell you something. When a young man comes up and talks to us about deer hunting, we can talk about nothing but deer hunting, but within about 5 minutes, we'll know what kind of father that kid had just by the conversation we have with him. That child is going to be a direct reflection of their parents. And, just think about that, your own kids. Your kids are a reflection of you. Are you going to be proud of them and when they go out into the world and are reflecting what you taught them? So just something to think about this fall. I'm not trying to get too political or push religion on anyone, but I just don't see this world getting any better. And there's things in this world that are more important than deer hunting. But deer hunting is a great opportunity to build relationships with your kids, but also a good opportunity to reflect on your life and how you're living it.
The Bible teaches us that hope is never going to be in man. The only hope is through the blood of Jesus. And I have my political views and I know who I'm voting for. But for the people that think that the racial problems that are in this country, and for the people that think that the economic problems that are in this world are going to be solved by voting for one side or the other, they're wrong. And I agree with you. It's unfortunate that social media has gotten to the point that there's this much hate. And Steve Shields and I, when we were up in your shed talking after you went down to the house one night, said that 15 years ago, half of the stuff that was said on social media, typed on social media, wouldn't be said 15 years ago because somebody gotten punched in the mouth. And it's empowered people to basically take a very selfish approach to opinions and tone and words that cut people deep. So as you're sitting in the stand and you're reflecting on what your life and what your purpose is, are you going to spend time trying to make a difference, or are you going to spend time sitting back bashing something? And it's okay to speak up for what you believe in, but I don't think it's okay for you not to try to make a difference in somebody else's life. You told me a long time ago, Don, that the best way to be blessed is be a blessing to someone else, and I'm going to do that no matter what it is, whether it's coaching softball or hunting. If there's an opportunity that I can make a difference to somebody else, I know that I'm going to get my chance and my shot. I'm not worried about that. So something for everybody to think about for sure as they spend a little bit more time in the stand. And if you have questions about your faith and Don or I can answer questions for you about it, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. If we can't answer it, we're by no means the spiritual doctrine experts in any ways and means, but we can tell you sure how it's made a difference in our lives. So I do appreciate your friendship and your boldness, though. It means a lot to have one of my closest friends being willing to speak up for not only what they believe in, but also for the Lord. So that means a lot to me.
Well, and likewise, I think we make a pretty good pair. And, one other thing I'll throw out to the listeners is if you got prayer requests, you can send them to us. Just this evening, I heard from a young man from Michigan who is going through a divorce, hasn't seen his kids in over a month. He just asked he said he lives for deer hunting, but this year he can't even get into it because he hasn't seen his kids for a month. And until he sees his kids, nothing else matters. And he asked for prayer. So, I put him on my prayer list. So that goes out to everyone. There's going to be times in everyone's life where things aren't going good and you need prayer. Don't be afraid to just send us a message and we'll be glad to put you on our prayer list.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, is that it for this week's episode?
Yeah, I think so. So we're going to try to do these about every 10 days here through October. We was on a 2-week schedule, but we're going to move it up to about 10 days between podcasts here in October. And then when we get into November, we're going to bump it up to weekly.
And if you hunt that morning and you kill that target buck, we're going to have to get on here and admit to everybody that you killed it in the morning so we can take all of that hit.
I'll get roasted big time. It'll be worth it, though.
It'll be worth it. So,
yeah.
But we really want to appreciate it. We want to say how much we appreciate everybody's support. The last couple episodes have just gone through the roof. For those people who left comments about, the Whitetail Cribs thing that I did, I was actually on 3 different podcasts the same week, which it's still kind of surreal that anybody wants to hear what I got to talk about. But it does mean a lot to Don and I that you guys are sharing and supporting and leaving comments. That means more than you know. We try really hard to be as honest and as truthful as we can for everybody. And we don't always agree with each other, much less every listener out there, and that's okay. We try to be as honest as we can. So,
and we do, even though the whole tree saddle thing started as a joke. and ruffled some feathers. We support all hunters. It doesn't matter what method you like to do. If you like the tree saddles, that's great. If you like public land, that's great. We're not here to judge. We're just here to share.
That's right. So on behalf of all of our sponsors, Don's going to take us out. But again, thank you very much, and we'll see you in about 10 days.
All right. I want to thank our sponsors, buyafarm.com, 360 Hunting Blinds, Quiet Cat, Lone Wolf Tree Stands, Matthews, Vortex Optics, and Real World Wildlife Products. Everyone stay safe. We'll see you next time.